gently inward. Starting the next breath cycle, imagine the sound of the ocean or a deep sigh at the back of the throat. You may find a little expanse, allowing that sound of the ocean on both the inhales as well as the exhales. And again, a gentle firming of the belly at the bottom of the exhale. We can go ahead and release our hands to the side. Start bringing movement of the body to the breath. So inhaling, feeling a little taller in our mountain. You can bring the palms to face forward. Crown of the head lifts at the top of the inhale. And on the exhale, feel as if the energy is drawing back through the head, through the body, down the feet, down the soles, back to the earth. With the next inhale, we're going to roll the weight, feeling the center of gravity shift from the center of the feet towards the toes until we stop. And then using the next breath, we can slowly roll the weight under the feet to our tipping point nearer to the heels, and hopefully stopping before we fall back. We're just going to use the next few breaths to get that forward to back muscle memory of the foundation of the feet. And then we can meet somewhere back at center and try to use the breath as a guide. Meeting back on an inhale or an exhale, dropping in. Inhale to reset the mountain. And then we're going to still use that reach upwards to roll the weight towards the side. I'm going towards my right side. We're just lifting, using the next breath to come up to center, or continuing all the way over with that same breath until we're at the leftmost edge. So just using that rocking motion from left to right like a metronome, we're just trying to find how it feels when the center of gravity shifts, just from left to right on the soles of the feet. And then we'll meet back at center, dropping back in, resetting, just a little taller, a little longer in the legs. Let's lift and start making circles in one direction. It might be a little choppy. You're just trying to explore how it feels to imagine the perimeter of the feet as your boundary. And so as you are able to get more and more towards the edges of the feet and make that circular path, once you've found that edge, you can go ahead and start tightening in the circles, and we'll meet back at center. Imagine water going down the drain. And back at center, we'll reset. And with that lift still there, make the small circle, circular direction in the opposite direction. And notice if it's a little choppier on this side, or if it's smoother, or if it's just the same. Just gives you an idea of what's to come. So we'll go ahead and tighten those circles in, meet at the center, and now we have a very good connection to our feet, to the foundation. Let's go ahead and roll the toes, lift up the heels. You can bend one knee and then the other. We'll go ahead and shake out any other leftover tension there. Standing up nice and tall, we're going to bring some walking, some standing weight into the right leg. I'm switching it up this time. We've got the right standing leg. And imagine if you've been here for the classes with the block underneath the standing leg of our tree, you're just wanting to stack the bones on top of each other without hyperextending the back of your knee and without jutting out that side of the hip. So once you feel good there, nice and stable, just explore. See if you can just lift the sole of the foot. You might have had the ball of the foot or the toes of the left leg. You might have had that down to help you find that balance. And then you can reset the foot back down. We'll do this one more time. Resetting, bringing some standing weight to the right standing leg. And then this time, after you lift up the left foot, let's see if you can stand and rock forward and back just a little. Oh, and I'm sorry, I just had thought too, if you fall out, that's okay. You're cultivating your balance, so it's all right. If you fall out, just come on back. Try to reset and go again. If your balance is severely limited, you might need to be near a wall. You might need to have a chair near you. But once you're done getting that front to back movement in the hip there, we'll go ahead and let that leg rest. We're going to stand one more time in this right standing leg, And one last movement for the left hip. We're lifting up the knee and bending it slightly, going inner to outer rotation. We're doing that a few times, and if you find that movement is available, you can go ahead and speed it up. And then we'll reverse that direction. So from outer to inner rotation, and again, trying to maintain the verticality of your body and just finding that movement, hopefully, in that left hip. And then let's go ahead and shake out any of that activated muscle on the right side of the body that didn't release after we came out of that. Kicking forward and to the side before we cross the midline. And then we'll move on over to the other side. Standing nice and tall, and then now bringing some standing weight to the left leg, and therefore the left side of the body is now this one big column of support. We'll go ahead and lift the right foot, and then see if you can balance just by standing there. You can engage the glute. You can gently tuck under the tailbone if that helps you to stay upright. And then let's go ahead and let that right foot rest. Come on out. Reset our mountain once more. Pulling weight into that left standing leg one more time. Lifting up the right foot. This time making, if you can find that balance, making a slight forward to back movement of the right leg to get some lubrication to the right hip. Forward to back. And you can rest once you've done that for a few breaths, a couple breaths. And then we'll move to the very last hip rotation for the right hip. So standing weight in our left leg, engage the muscles, stacking everything, and then we can lift the right knee, bending it slightly towards the inner and then outer rotation of the right hip. Let the right foot land. Inhale, inner towards the outer rotation, and then you can just make that movement very fluid if it's available to you. Do about 4 of those, and then we can move to the other side. So we're basically going from outer to in with the next set, and that should finish our right hip warm-up. Doing about 3 to 4, making sure you're nice and lubricated. Okay, so we'll move on up towards the body. So as we're returning to mountain, see if you can lengthen through the legs a little more. If it's still very tight in the back of the legs, you can keep that bend to the knees. But all we're trying to do is get a little taller, a little more stacked, and eventually the ankles will be under the knees, under the hips, under the shoulders, under the ears. So lifting up the chest, gentle tuck of the chin. Let's inhale, really reaching upwards with the crown of the head. We're just going to dip the right ear with the next exhale towards the right until it stops. Going to turn around so you see the benefit of a space here about the size of a tennis ball or a large orange. Hopefully feeling with an inhale a lifting of the chest and energizing, and then you can turn the gaze with the exhale. Find that nice twist to help facilitate the stretch on the left side. It's at about this time we're spending about 3 to 4 breaths just breathing. Inhaling to feel stability, circulation of air, of energy through the body. And with the exhale, trying to find a little release. See if there's any tension in the left side of the shoulder, the left side of the neck, palms facing forward. And hopefully by the end of your 4th breath cycle, your eyes may even be landing somewhere on your right thumb, your right shoulder, maybe even behind your back. With the next inhale, let's go ahead and bring the eyes, the gaze, the head completely lifts, feeling that energy of lifting, and then exhaling over to the other side. And again, keeping some space between the left shoulder and the left earlobe. Inhaling, the chest lifts, exhaling, the gaze turns. Give yourself a few more breaths. That deep ocean breath, maybe the rib cage can expand sideways even. And remember, with the exhale, at the bottom of the exhale, a slight engagement to help expel as much of the air as possible. Then after that last breath cycle, you can bring the eyes, the gaze, the head back to center, lifting, and then letting the eyes guide the gaze downward. Now, it's about 6 feet in front of you. So at that point, you're feeling this nice length to the back of the neck. But again, the space of a tennis ball underneath the chin. We're not resting our chin on the chest. And when we inhale, everything is energizing, moving in an upward, if not a slightly diagonal upward lift. And on the exhales, again, engaging the core slightly at the bottom, but imagine those shoulder blades rolling back and down. And then we'll go ahead after the very last exhale. Allow the inhale to help bring the eyes upward past the center line and directly above you. If your eyes can see the ceiling, you're good to go there. Just give yourself a chance to open up through the front of the throat and through the chest. So externally rotating the shoulders away from the front. And that just enables you to get a little more space to breathe. Palms facing forward. You can make a small O, gradually opening up to a large O with the mouth. And you can slightly sway the jaw from side to side. You might hear some popping, some crunchiness, and just getting some lubrication in these tight areas. And with the last exhale, go ahead and release. We'll inhale, eyes back to center. And just kicking out any leftover activation. Sometimes I have a habit of gripping the mat, so just remembering to lift up every now and then between the poses is a nice thing. We'll go ahead and start with our first fold. So really reaching those arms downward, energizing downward. Let's inhale, elevate the arms as we're still reaching, and at the top we may even have the torso lift. Exhale, let's hinge at the hips, long back, somewhere halfway down. You can walk the hands down the thighs, down the shins, and give your body the chance to open up. Notice if you're holding onto the head, and that just simply means, are you trying to lift the head so you can see? So maybe rest the gaze somewhere in between the feet or soften the gaze. You might also want to gently shake the head no, gently nod the head yes, and then see if that releases any tension. If the palms are facing up, that will help to keep the shoulders rotated away from the ears. But if you're down here and you've got your forearms on the thighs helping you, you just don't press into anything. You're just hopefully allowing the body to be supported by the thighs. And the same thing with the hand positioning. If they're here, try not to press into the floor. Just let the backs of the hands rest. All these little resting efforts will essentially help signal to the body that it's okay and it's soft, and it will actually release just a little bit more. And hopefully you're feeling much of that at the base of your lower lumbar here, right above the tailbone, right here. A lot of stretching going on. You can bend one knee, straighten it out, bend the other knee if you're still working with tight backs of the legs. And then with the next inhale, we're going to consciously come out of here with a slow inhale where we're straightening up the spine. So to begin with, press into the feet, engage the core, firm up the legs, and start to straighten up the back. But it's a slow roll up. If you have to walk the hands up somewhere halfway down, you can, or halfway up. But the last thing that should stack on top of the neck is the head. Just let the shoulders release down the back. Palms facing forward just facilitates that release. We're going to inhale, start to reach downward, elevate those arms once more for another fold. Not as long this time. So exhale, let's hinge at the hips, folding, keeping a straighter back, longer legs if possible, all the way down here. A couple of breaths here. You can sway the sacrum from side to side. You can roll from the toes to the heels, and then redistribute the weight once more. Feel as if you've got all points supporting the weight on your feet with a little more back towards the heels. Let's go ahead and inhale. We're going to extend the arms, and you can walk if you have lower back problems, you can walk the arms back up, or you can use, if your back is pretty good, at this point, inhale, strong back, strength of the inhale to bring you all the way back up, and then exhale, hands down, heart center. We'll pour some weight into the left standing leg, pressing into the palms for stability. Inhale the right foot up. Exhale the right heel, ball of foot and toes down. Starting the walking meditation, inhale, left foot up. Exhale, left foot down. And you know where we're going, to the top of the mat. It's a slow, steady race to the top. And essentially, one step is one breath cycle. And we'll meet at the top of the mat, looking down at the fingertips, pressing into the palms. Let's inhale. Watch the fingertips rise. Reach up at the top of the inhale, separate the palms. Exhale, hinge. Bend the knees if you need. Fully exhaled here. Let's inhale for a half lift. That just means we're lengthening from the tailbone all the way through the crown of the head. We don't want to crane the neck. We just want to keep the gaze downward so we have a nice long line from the tailbone to the crown of the head. And see if you can spin those sits bones back behind you. So if you feel like you're rolling, shifting weight to the outer edges of your feet, bring some weight into the inner arches. We really want to have that good, even distribution of weight on the feet. So here we're nice and long with the inhale, and then exhale, bend the elbows, bring the chest closer to your fold. Fully exhaled here. We're going to bring the hands to either side of our feet and step the one right leg back, and then the left leg back to meet the right. Pull the shoulders over the wrists, and then bring the knees down, untuck the toes, and let's focus a few breaths here in our first modified high plank. So we're hopefully really lengthening through our arms, finding strength in the upper shoulders, keeping some space. And imagine that you're just really trying to curve out the top of the shoulders, the tops of the shoulder blades without curving the back itself. So you're just widening that space. So extending through the arms, that really helps. And then a gentle tuck, a sloping of the back down towards the tailbone. Let's go ahead and tuck the toes, lift up the hips, and exhale back the hips towards the back of the mat. And that should have shifted the heels back a little bit, but they don't have to touch. Eventually they may touch, but they may be very tight and not touching, so don't force that. You can cycle out the legs. We stay here about 5 breath cycles, and here you get to explore. Notice if your head is lifted way up or way down. We really want those ears somewhere in between the arms, the inner arms there, and the shoulders rotated away from the ears. So if you have the points of the elbows pointing backwards so that when you bend them, they'll point towards the back, the crooks of the elbows should be facing the front of the mat, and that'll help to keep those shoulders from caving into the ears. Next thing to think about, if you're feeling good in the length of the back of the feet, the legs, Achilles heel and all that, then your heels may be down closer to the mat. See about maybe even pigeon toeing the toes a little bit and feeling as if you're really lifting the hips up towards the ceiling. So you have that upside down V, firming up the belly, just really bringing the belly muscles to the spine. Then with the next inhale, let's go ahead and look towards the hands, and we're going to walk the hands towards the feet. You can bend the knees. If the legs are really tight, you'll need to do that. You might need to even step back if you were more towards the center. But let's go ahead and inhale for half lift, straightening the legs, straightening the back, nice and wide. Exhale, let's fold. Exhale, just folding the elbows might help to bring you back into the fold. Inhale, extend those arms, come on up. You can walk the hands up if you need, but coming all the way back up. Exhaling, hands down, heart center. One more walking meditation. Inhale, right foot up. Exhale, right foot down. Inhale, left foot up. Exhale, left foot down. Inhale, exhale. And at the top of the mat, go ahead and look down at the fingertips. Inhaling, hands rise. Exhaling, hands separate, fold. Fully exhaled here. Inhale, half lift. Nice and long back. Exhale, plant the hands. Step the right foot. Step the left foot. Nice long legs. Pulling the shoulders over the wrists. You can keep the hips higher than the hypotenuse, but don't let them really sag down lower. You can also modify your high plank if you still need to. You can bring the knees down, but we're really firming up the belly, engaging the core, keeping the upper shoulders nice and strong. And then we're going to inhale, lift up the hips, and push the heels and hips back towards the back of the mat. See where you land, and see if you can lengthen through the back just a little more. You might be able to, with this second down dog, be able to get a little more of a release in the hips by swiveling them. And then we'll go ahead and look to the hands one more time. Exhale, walk the hands to the back of the mat. Fully exhaled here. Inhale for a half lift. Exhale, fold. Inhale, extend the arms, come all the way back up. Exhaling, hands down, heart center, and then finally the hands down to the side. Whew. Okay, so it might be a good time for a water break as well. Let me grab some water really quick. But as we're coming out of our modified sun salutation, we're going to come into our standing poses. So our first one will be our tree. And if you have the block and you want to use that, go ahead if that helps you. If you're good to go and you just want to move straight into it, go into it. I'll start with my left standing leg. And I'm just going to start by feeling the stacking in the left standing leg. Once you're feeling nice and stable there, you can lift up the other foot. You can bring that ankle and heel together. I feel like I'm wobbly here. So if you're feeling a little wobbly, you can always come out and reset as well. Usually I don't have that on the mat when I'm doing that. Let's see, that may have been it. Okay. So we'll go in for your round of tree, and once it's nice and stable, you can bring the hands in. All we're trying to do is maintain that stability in the left standing leg so that we can eventually open up through the right hip. If you're feeling wobbly, pressing into the palms, that really does help. A few breaths there, and when you're ready to come out, we bring the hands out, then we internally rotate, bring the toes, if you're on the block, bend that left knee a little to help you land gently, and then you can move the block. If you're not using the block, don't worry about it, you just know how to get out then. So we'll move over to the other side if you're using the block. If not, just go into your first and second versions of tree as we're going along here. So coming on to the block, toes are a little bit on the edge. My left foot toes are really pointed to help me find that nice stability there. And then engaging the glute, feeling that engagement of the legs, pressing into the feet. Once that's there, then you can externally rotate the left hip, start to bring the left heel to rest on the right ankle, bringing the hands when you're ready there. And again, it's that soft vision, some point off to the center somewhere, and you're just breathing here, 3 to 5 breaths. Feeling the openness in the left hip. When you're ready to come out, the hands come out first, and then internally rotate, and then bring those toes to touch, bend the right knee if you're on the block, otherwise lay on that left foot. And then you can move on to your second tree, and you can go higher up with your second tree if I didn't already mention that. Usually if I'm on the block, I don't want to be on the mat, but now that I'm not on the block, I want to be on the mat. So here we go. Pouring some weight into this right standing leg. And then when I'm ready, externally rotating the hip before moving my foundation, how I'm using the base here in the tree. So your base might be higher up on the tree. You might have your left sole of the foot on the calf, maybe on the inner thigh. But you don't want to have that on the knee. The knee itself, you don't want to, you can mess with a lot of things. You can mess with the gods, but don't mess with the knees. It's something a yogi once said, I've heard. So that seems to be a very good spot to avoid in our tree. So hands up, And breathing 3 to 5 breaths when you're done, reaching that sweet spot. And soft gaze, that feeling of support all the way up the right leg, up through the torso, through the crown of the head. When you're done, you can stop. Start with the hands, releasing the hands, internally rotating the left hip, and letting that left foot land gently. Getting rid of any residual tension. Okay, just want to make sure I'm good with time here. And then we can go ahead and move into a lunge. So we're going to need a block here. We're going into a low lunge. And for some of us, it just depends on how our hips are open. I'm going to go off camera here. I'm grabbing a chair just in case. But you can do this with blocks. You can do this with a chair. Let me show you what we're trying to go for at this point. And I'll start with the left leg at top and extending the right leg back. We're essentially just trying to go for a low lunge where the knee is directly above the ankle of that front foot. And in this case, it's my left one. But basically, we're going here. We're trying to keep the hips facing the front of the mat while we're here. So here, we can put our hands on our thighs. We can have the back of a chair. And we really want to have this chair on the mat if it's on a slidey, slippery floor like this linoleum floor. And we're just going to use that until we can bring ourselves into that general alignment there. You'll notice this back leg is just, it's all kinds of stuff back there. That's okay. My right hip is kind of tight in this low lunge, so I'm not going far. So lifting up the torso, having the torso in this upright 90-degree angle, that's one of the things we're looking for. But if you're really tight, you may be leaning forward with the torso, and that's okay too. Just one step at a time. We'll go ahead and come on out if you've been here for a while. So that's one way of where we're going, and we're modifying with this chair on this side. You can also modify with the block though. So coming down again, and then you might need a little more help here. But you want to have maybe a softer block, maybe the cork won't hurt, but you want to have the shin supported. And then you would bring out the foot a little bit. And you might have to do something like this for a while. And that's just one way of keeping you in control of how much you're opening up these hips in these positions. And in this low lunge, you sometimes will need that extra bit of help. So you can use the prop of a block under the shin on this side, or maybe on the flatter side. Now I have 2 narrow blocks here, but you might have one of those really thick ones. So it just depends on how comfortable you are. You want to rest the majority of your weight on the shin, not the kneecap. And again, we're looking for the hips being in line with one another, so we don't want one dipping this way. That might look like you tilting off to the side. We don't want that. We want them parallel to one another, as well as parallel to the floor. So that might be one way. And again, we're just trying to find what works for us in that low lunge stretch. Now, I'm pretty activated in that left side, so I need to switch. And I'll show you on this side another way to use this chair to do a low lunge. But this one requires that all feet are on your mat. So with the other one, I was using the back of the mat with the 2 legs in the back on the mat so that it kept the chair from slipping. But here, I'm actually going to sit sideways. And hopefully you can see this. And I'm supporting, I had to switch to the other side, but now I'm supporting my hips on the chair. One hip is completely off, but it's still in line with the other hip. And the seat of the chair is supporting the hip where the leg is bent, right? Let me do this, because I have slippery socks on too. My left leg is kind of sliding. But this would be another way of opening up in your lunge. So maybe you just need to start cultivating the strength to be able to be upright on your own. And until then, having the chair here is going to help you to open up those super tight hips. You'll notice that the top of my left foot is on the floor. If that is feeling good for you, you'll get a tremendous stretch at the top of the ankle. It's one of those areas of the body that we hardly ever just release. We're constantly in flexion. So that might feel really nice. But if that starts to bother you, you can always bring the toes to tuck and kind of help. You can also use a block. If for some reason the block needs to be used for the foot. These are just things that you can do to help you accommodate. But remember, we're really trying to open up through the hips with our lunges. We've already done a lot of the flexions in our normal habitual living, so it's really the opening that we're looking for in this low lunge pose to help us release. Okay, so that should feel really nice. We're going to do that one more time, but I'm not going to use the chair. So what you're really looking for, again, is the top leg. The knee is stacked on top of the ankle. And then we want to only go back as far as our hip openness will allow us. So we may need to bring a block back there, rest our shin on it, and kind of open it up from there. But we really want to keep this hip open. And we want the front leg to be stable, supporting the weight safely by not having this front knee exceed the point, go beyond the ankle. So we'll go there. And this just was not feeling good with that hard cork block there. So if you have a lot of meat on your shins, mine are bony, maybe you could use the cork. But if not, using a nice foam block feels much nicer for bony shins. All right. And it's usually about 2 sets on each side. The first set being exploratory. The second set, just a couple breath cycles longer. But we're feeling lifted, feeling as if the chest is maintaining its energy. Crown of the head might feel like a string is pulling you upwards. You can use your hands to help stabilize if you don't have the chair in as a prop here. And again, a gentle engagement of the core to help stabilize the torso over the pelvis. And what we're just trying to do is open up. When you're ready, we'll just fold forward, bring our hands to a stable area so we can lift our shin off the blocks if they happen to be there, or if we're using the chair, we'd be able to use the chair to help get up. And I guess I should be able to show you a safer way to that. If you were here, you would just basically use the chair in the back to kind of move your way back up. All right, so all these little things, but if you're using a prop you've never used before, it helps to know what you can do with it. Okay, we'll come over to this side here. And after the low lunges, we're coming down all the way to the floor. So if you like to have cushion between you and the floor, if you have carpet, if you have a nice thick rug, you're probably good. But otherwise, you may need a blanket. We're just going to come to all fours and keep the knees a little wider than hips distance. Not as wide as the mat, but just a little wider. You can get the toes to touch. And now we're going to bring the hips to meet the heels. And we may need a block, maybe some rolled up blankets, maybe even a cushion if it's not that easy to have the hips meet the heels. And all we're doing is moving towards this child's pose, and we're setting the foundation first. We want to get the hips onto the heels. Once we can do that, once you've got the hips and the heels either supported by a block or directly on each other there, then you can think about lengthening through the spine. And then exhale, hinging at the hips. Start to walk the hands, forearms down. And again, this might be as far as your child's pose might be. Might be that you need to be supported a little bit by blocks. maybe no blocks. Maybe your belly's just in between your thighs, just letting it release on its own with gravity. But if you notice that you're not going to bring the chest to the floor, you can always bring support to the chest. But wherever you are, once you find that edge, give yourself a breath or two. See if you notice any other parts of your body releasing. And then you can decide what you'd like to do with your neck. For some people, having it just hang there, a gentle traction of gravity helps to release. But if you don't like that and that doesn't feel good to you, you can always keep the head supported, but we don't want to crane the neck again, so just make sure it's at least level and long. And you're just gently resting it on your block edge. Maybe it's even the thumbs. But me personally, there are days where I just like to let it hang, and it seems to release a lot more in my upper shoulders. See what works for you. But once you found that edge, it's from there. You're taking 5 slow, deep breath cycles. Those are the inhales, the pause, the exhale, the pause. Or 10 really little faster ones, I guess. But give yourself some time to let the body use the breath to engage in the parasympathetic nervous system. That's a part of your nervous system that controls your heart rate, how fluids are moving through the body, which hormones are signaling to your body to rest and digest. And after you're done with your very last exhale, to come out, you'll think about where your head is supported. Lift up the head, remove any blocks from the chest, and then bring the hands underneath the shoulders. Start to straighten up the spine, lifting up the torso, and bringing yourself upright. We'll go ahead and come into a hero pose, tucking the toes or untucking them. That's up to you. But again, we'll just be exploring the stretch here. Start off with your hands out in front of you if this is not something that you're used to. Of course, if you're all into the Seiza toe hold hero position, we're working towards walking the hands upright until we're finally just resting on our heels. Getting this tremendous stretch to the arches if they're tucked under, and getting a tremendous stretch to the tops of the ankles if they're not tucked under, if they're just resting on the mat. You can do some things with your hands. We stay here for about 5 breath cycles. You're always welcome to come out. If this is just like, I can deal with a second of it, then come on out. It's okay. You can just sit and rest in child's pose or in hero, in whichever foot configuration works for you. But if you weren't bothered by that and this is a part of your practice, you might be able to squeeze in some finger shoulder stretches. Just simply interlacing the fingers, bringing them close, bringing them out, in, out, in, out, in, out. And there you go. And then that just helps you. Then you can come on out. If you haven't already, and gently tap out the toes. You could just rest the toes kind of bent in the opposite position. Don't bear any weight on it, but just, place it there, a little bent toes, and then you can tap them out. We'll come on down to our belly for Sphinx. So in Sphinx, and you're coming down one forearm at a time, gently lower down the upper body together and savor being supported here. You might roll on the hip bones a little bit from side to side. You might be able to turn the head to one side, extend the backs of the hands, the arms along the side, and just breathe here. Notice the placement of your left cheek if you're looking to the right, or your other cheek if you're looking the opposite direction. But you're just going to give yourself a breath here, and then press into the chest, lift up the head, turn the gaze, brush the nose, and rest the other to the other side. Rest the cheek on the other side. So now my right cheek is on the mat, And just notice where it is. It's not quite towards my ear. It's just that first starting point. And then inhale, press into the mat one more time with the chest. Bring the hands under the shoulders and walk the fingers up so that the elbows are directly under the shoulder. You can try to keep a little bit of openness. It's as if your shoulders are moving in opposite directions, moving the shoulder blades away from the spine. That helps to keep the space there. We're not getting too far up yet. We're going to focus on everything from the hips down. You can go ahead and get on to the tops of the toes, toe tips. You can walk your legs out away from the sockets, away from the hip bones. And then that way, they're just nice and long. And then relax. Let everything just act as an anchor weight for the lower body. From the belly up, forward, we're going to think about supporting the upper body from the elbow through the forearm, through the palms, to the fingertips. And fingers are splayed, middle and index fingers pointing towards the top. And once we just evenly distribute weight from the elbows all the way through to the fingertips, we're just pressing down and then almost dragging the torso forward, just in a straight line forward. And at that last bit of the pull, let's go ahead and pull up the gaze just slightly. So eventually you're just resting soft eyes at about the fingertip level. You don't have a curve to the neck. You have a nice long neck. And it's almost as if the crown of the head is in that slight tilt, like when we were warming up before. And as you breathe, you're lifting, but you're lifting at a slight diagonal. My elbows seem to be a little too wide, so I was feeling a little bit of pressure in between my shoulder blades. You want to have the elbows directly under the shoulders so that it's nice and open. And then for 5 deep breath cycles, use the ocean ujjayi breath. See if you can use the movement of the breath to bring the skin at the top of the belly to meet the mat. Could be that that's the only thing that's moving during the breath. If your shoulders are tensing where they don't need to tense, if your fingers are tented and they don't need to be tented, see if you can relax them. Only use those muscles needed to keep this general form. And if you can imagine the bottoms of your shoulder blades, those angel's wings points, just slightly tucking into the mid-back, while the tops of your shoulder blades, those are the ones that are wide and moving away from the ears, away from the spine. If you notice that you started to clench a glute or a toe, something in the lower regions, try to release it with the exhale. Let it be soft. And with your very last breath cycle approaching, begin to come out by simply allowing the chest to start to lower down, one vertebra at a time. And then the elbows can move off to the side so that you can just pillow the backs of your hands underneath your brow line. And just release. Notice, breathe deeply through the nose. Notice if you're holding tension in the shoulders, in the fingers, in the elbows. Just let that go. And then we'll move our hands back under our shoulders, start to lift up the shoulders a little bit, and we're going to be moving on to our back. So if you like to do a reverse push-up, you can. That's a little more strenuous though. So unless my back is really strong, I like just rolling over to my side. I do get off the mat, but I just shimmy on over a little bit at a time, 1 inch at a time. Slowly, shoulders and then hips, shoulders then hips, just a little bit until I get back onto the mat. If you have a better way of getting onto the mat, please have at it. But now, in this last phase, we've got one more pose before we move into Shavasana. We're just going to do a spinal twist here, and that should help us release the lower back tension and get us, some stretching in the hamstrings all along the sides of our rib cage. It's a really great way to release. Having blocks at either side, that just is there in case you don't meet the distance. If we roll over to one side and your leg is hovering out in the midair, that's fine. But if that's something that doesn't feel good to you, you can always rest that foot or the knee on a block, and then that will help you until you're able to completely release. So in our base bridge position, we're just basically being flat on our back, making sure there isn't any skin folded uncomfortably, and with the knees pointing towards the ceiling, hips distance apart are our feet. Our hands are going to be out to our sides, palms down. We're just going to use our arms to help us lift the one foot up and straighten it best that you can. So right now, with the leg up, you'll notice if you've got tight hips and knees, your knee may be bent, your hip might be a little off to the side here. We're going to work with that. We're working with just basically internally rotating our hip. And you can gently help rotate the hip by just moving the flesh on your thigh. Now don't force anything. You just gently want to see if you can move it a little bit if you've noticed that you're turned out because of habitual posturing for whatever reason. We're looking towards maybe pressing into the ball of the foot, that pad right underneath the big toe, to help with that rotation as well, all the way down to the foot. So once that's there, we can go ahead and exhale the left leg long. Now, we were flexing the left hip, so that might leave a little bit of residual activation in the hip. So to help you release, flex the left foot, point the toes towards you, and then release. See if that helps. You'll notice that the calf might touch the floor, and it should hopefully release the left hip. Once that's there, we'll go ahead and bring out our right arm out to a T, directly out at 90-degree angle to the body. And you'll be moving, helping to roll the body over with this right arm that's out. The left hand will just gently guide, land it on the right thigh, and gently roll onto your left side. So you're rolling onto the left side. The left hand is just helping to support the weight of the leg. And then you may need to move the block that you set up as that landing pad if you decide to go that route. But once you find the comfortable positioning of this right leg, then you can focus on the rest of the body. Now you're probably off at an angle, that's okay. Just making sure that you're not feeling a torquing in your right knee. And that's the only thing you need to worry about. If you're feeling torquing, you may, just let an uncomfortable pull, you may need to pull the block underneath the knee, setting it up on a higher setting than it was at the foot. And that just helps you to be a little more supported. So wherever you are, once you've figured out how the legs are feeling here, and then they're resting at their rightful place on this side, on the left, then you can notice the arm positioning and the shoulders. This right shoulder does not have to be on the floor. Eventually, it may find its way to the floor though. But if it's way up high there, that's okay. Leave it there, it's all right. If you need to have a block underneath, you could put a block there if that feels better for you. But eventually, you can finish off this pose. It's a 3 to 5 breaths, essentially, to find that first edge. But then you may want to finish up by just simply placing the palms either up or down. So when your palm is faced up, it externally rotates the shoulder, opens it up. But some of us have such tight shoulders, that might be too much. You might need to lower the hand, not at a 90 degree, but maybe at more of a 45 degree angle away from the body. And you can just place the palm down if that just does not feel good to you. And then play with the placement of the palm on this side as well as the arm configuration. Eventually, the very last thing is just the gaze to the opposite side of the twist. So just allowing the eyes to soften, letting the tongue release if it's stuck to the roof of the mouth. And just try to release any activated muscles.
And then so all you have to do is breathe then. After finding the sweet spot, I guess, your edge, then you can just breathe to help facilitate the body's response. So slow Ujjayi breaths, even in this twisted form, you'll be finding benefits in the internal organs. And as you quiet down, you're essentially communing with the body once more. Noticing if there's any achiness. And just releasing it with the exhale. Noticing if you're holding anything that does not need to be held. And as you approach your last couple of breaths, you can focus on bringing the gaze back to center with your chest. And then you can use your hands to help lift and guide the leg back up to center so you roll back onto the mat. Let the right foot land. Bend the left knee, and let's have a windshield wiper too. Let's start on the right side to counter stretch. And just let it sit there roll there for a little bit. We're just on the outer rightmost edges of our soles of our feet. Your knees might be on the floor eventually. They may just hover up in the air. It's okay. But after a couple moments there, we're going to inhale. You can use your hands if you need to help guide the legs back up. And we'll move over to the other side for the twist. So making sure your spine and neck are aligned. We'll go ahead and extend through the right leg. We're kind of reversing the way we got into our spinal twist from how we started, but that's okay. Go ahead and lengthen through this leg. And if your right leg is super tight, your calf might be lifted. It might be really difficult to open up this right hip. So you can flex the foot, point the foot, and then just let it relax. Hopefully that releases the tension that's still locked up in the calf or in the right hip. And then we'll go ahead and bring out the arms on to either side of us, 45-degree angle, 90-degree angle, just something nice and stable with the palms down. Inhale, lift the left foot and extend it best that you can. And you'll be doing the same thing. If your foot is really bent, we'll just try to play with bending the knee, lengthening it a little bit, flexing the foot, pointing the foot. You can use your hands. If you're really turned out, if you're really externally rotated, help to internally rotate the flesh on the thighs and to bring that leg into about a 90-degree angle or to that goal. Eventually you'll get there, but we're just trying to get there best that we can. So once that's there, we'll put out our left arm out to a 90-degree angle if that feels good, or a 45-degree angle, but palm down. We're going to be using that to help push us over to the other side. Right hand gently guides the left thigh, and on an inhale, you can start to roll, and hopefully by the end, you're somewhere on this side. And again, you can rest that foot on the block that happens to be there, or you can let it dangle in the air. And we're taking 3 to 5 good deep breaths here. Even as you're twisted on this side, making the effort to do the slow, deep inhale with air passing over the glottis. You should have an easier time of releasing. And we're also cultivating the restorative part of your practice. We're starting to move into a quieter, more relaxed, restorative stage where the body can respond. And hopefully the very last couple of breaths finds that your shoulders are melted, Your belly is soft. And to come out, we'll bring the gaze back to the center of the chest. Start to use both hands to help to bring the left leg back to center, back onto the mat. And we'll bend the right knee and windshield wipe to the left side. So on the soles of the feet, we're nice and flat, and just roll to the left sides of the soles of the feet. Allow the windshield wipe to just unfold on its own. Might take a little bit of time, but you may feel things within the pelvic area release, the psoas, the hip flexor muscles, all of these internal rotation muscles, external rotation muscles, all these partnerships that we're using every single day. Sometimes just having a nice windshield wipe to one side does a tremendous reset. And when we're ready to come out, you can use your hands too if you feel really fragile, but bringing the knees back up to center. And we're moving into Shavasana, our final relaxation. So make any movements that feel good to you. You might need an overhead arm stretch, lengthening of the legs, maybe wiggling of the toes, maybe hugging in of the knees and a slight massage. Whatever it is that you're going to do, make sure you're nice and relaxed. Got your last minute movements out. And then getting a blanket if that feels good. We'll be moving into about a 3-minute Shavasana, maybe 4. And just give yourself the time to respond. Returning to the breath, having a quiet meditation of listening to the breath will help you to engage the restorative aspect of the parasympathetic nervous system. And after, you'll hear the 3 bells, 3 rings. We'll end class with our breath cycle. So until then, let your thoughts be soft. Anything that should come up, let it go with the exhale. bring the mind to the body. Take note of sounds outside the room, sounds within the room, and finally back to the breath. Notice the air as the chest lifts. Notice the air as the chest falls. As you reconnect to the body once more, I invite you to make any movements, fingers, toes, wiggling, hugging in of the knees, rocking from side to side. We'll meet back in an upright position. You can sit up in staff, that's with the legs straight out in front of you, or you can sit with your knees bent, one leg out in front of the other. Easy seated position. And we'll go ahead and end class with a breath exercise to hopefully bring a little balance and more energy to you. Bringing the hands to interlace underneath the chin. We're going to rest the chin, keep the knuckles of your hands in contact with the chin, and we're just going to lift up the elbows and lower the elbows with the breath. So we'll start with a nice tall spine. Make sure you're rocking on the sits bones and then find that center. And then inhaling tall, keeping that connection of the knuckles to the chin. We're going to slowly lift the elbows. And don't worry if you have to take a couple of breaths here. We'll just hopefully sync up in a little bit. But at the top of the inhale, feel as if the torso is lifting. Exhale, and we're going to slightly bring the head back. Start to bring the elbows down. If they can touch in front of your chest, that's great. If not, that's okay too. Inhale, elbows up. Exhale, elbows down. We'll do this about 5 more times. Inhale, elbows up. Chin comes back to center. Exhale, elbows down. Inhale for 3. Exhale. Elbows touch. Eventually, maybe. Inhale for 4. Exhale. Inhale for 5. Exhale. One really good exhale. Firm up the belly, expel all the air, and then release the hands and release the arms. Hopefully that gave your shoulders a little bit of stretch. You can go ahead and roll them up a little bit, one alternately than the other. Bring hands to heart center. Thank you so much for joining me, Jeani, here at 1 o'clock Gentle Yoga at the ACC Zoom community room. I hope you have a wonderful day. Namaste. And I'll be here for the next little bit if you have any questions or comments. Thank you.
I do have a question.
Sure. Hi. You want to say your name?
Oh, I'm Laura.
Hi, Nora.
Elizabeth's sister.
Oh, hi.
On the pose before the end, when we have the one leg stretched out and the other one rolled over.
The spinal twist, yes.
Does the butt on the ground kind of lose contact as you roll towards the outside?
Yes. So what you're doing is when you roll to your side, your other side will be lifted, but you'll maintain contact with the side that you're rolling toward. So definitely. Yeah. So it's like imagine. Let's see. How can I do this? So imagine my arm that's up in the air is up against the wall, right? So when I'm saying that we're going to roll, we're taking this hand to help guide to this side to roll, right? So when that happens, this is all in contact with the floor, this entire side of the body, including the back and the other body side. And then as I roll, then it's just this, so that the only thing that's touching then would be this side. But that is an extremely, limber person with your lower half very twisted. So that would be, an advanced position that I would think somebody would use. If you're just now starting the spinal twist, remember the shoulder will be lifted. There will be parts of your body that hasn't quite gotten over to the other side. So your back, I don't know. Your back might be, let's see if I can get that here. So when your back's here and you're rolling to your side, like that, does that open? To your side, that's pretty advanced because you're essentially going to have some of your legs over as well. So there will be a really deep twist here. Imagine right where the fingers are is where the hips are, right? So it's a deep twist like that. Most of us, when we roll, there we go. When we roll, we're only rolling this much, really. We rarely get to the verticality, let alone the twisting, where your shoulders are both flat. So, give yourself some time. If you come to rest on the mat, and can you see me at the bottom? Are we able to get a visual at the bottom? Okay. So when I'm rolling this way, and I've got my leg on this side, so all this is off, and I'm just on the side, right? But then I might have, if I'm really, experienced in this pose, I might have the top of my torso completely flat. So that's essentially what a traditional classical spinal twist will look like. But the majority of people, we're just able to get to this point here. We might not even be able to roll onto the hip. We might just be at an angle, maybe 45-degree angle above the mat, as opposed to being at a 90-degree angle with the entire body to the mat. Does that kind of make sense? So if you're here, that's okay. You're just working towards this. You might have to have a block to help keep you kind of wedged upright, closer towards that roll. So I have a block right behind my back a little bit. Or if you don't want that and you're just going to naturally, eventually evolve that way, eventually it'll open up. I remember some people having to have maybe even like a chair where they have to rest their knee onto the chair because they're just not rolling over far enough yet. They have so much tightness in the lower back and, the hip flexors, all that becomes, it can have a lot of issues after a while. So you can stretch that out, and that's what I would just say is just give yourself some time. If your shoulder is lifted, if your legs are up in the air, that's okay. You might just need something to support it. So what we can do, too, is go over it more next time if you'd like to, and I can actually maybe see. Hi, Elizabeth. I could see if what you're doing might be facilitated better with the use of props. So, we could do that if you want. Nora? Okay. So are there any other, did that help at all? Or? Okay, the volume is off. I'm sorry, so I can't hear you. I don't have audio anymore. Oh, I can hear you now, I think. I think you turned on your audio.
Yes, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. And I see you, Elizabeth.
Yeah, thank you.
Sure, thank you. Bye.